bishop g5, bishop e6, e3, knight bd7. Notice how flexible Caruana is with this bishop. He may want to activate it on d6 instead. h3, very nice prophylactic move by Magnus. And the idea he's trying to prepare, in case he plays bishop d3, this move h6, g5 is really annoying. And then he doesn't want to lose the bishop pair. So this is exactly what he's trying to avoid. So he plays h3, useful move, bishop d6, bishop d3, c6, bishop f4. Now, it is important to know that bishop has to go to f4 whenever the pawn goes to c6. Why is that, you may wonder? Because after castles, queen c7, if white makes some kind of logical move like rook c1, the problem is once again that bishop. If you don't take the knight, which gives black a bishop pair, and go something like bishop h4, then after g5, bishop g3, you guys realize the main problem. Yes, black ends up winning a pawn. For instance, takes, queen g3. And that's why Magnus knows his lines. He plays this move, bishop f4. Now, I should mention that for these guys, all of this is well known. They're blitzing out the game like they've studied this in their sleep. So bishop takes f4 is considered inferior, obviously because the f pawn is quite annoying. Plus, white does get this powerful e5 outpost. As a matter of fact, these double pawns are not bad at all. And therefore, black plays queen c7, forcing white's hand. So white typically trades, castles, castle. Now, like I said, these 12 moves were probably played with literally seconds. They don't really think about the structure. But I like this position from an instructive point of view because the pawn structure is set, and we know that this happens in pretty much a lot of queen's gambit positions, right? We have the f2, e3, d4 against the b7, c6, d5. And white's plan in these positions typically is the minority attack. As a matter of fact, one previous game, Magnus played the logical move queen c2. Later, he played knight a4, prepared the b4 push. Sometimes you can play b4 immediately because you're actually not too worried about this. But surprisingly enough, queen c2 has been studied by Fabi, and it is very difficult for white to achieve an advantage. But for this game, Magnus prepares a really remarkable idea, a novelty. Right? This position has been played lots and lots at grandmaster level, but this novelty is extremely deep and at first looks completely weird. The move is queen b3. So aren't you stopping your own minority attack, you may wonder? Because Fabi simply plays rook b8. It feels like queen is misplaced. e4 obviously is never going to be played because you're walking into the x-ray of the bishop. And at first it looks like world champion might have messed up or even blundered. But okay, we know better than that, especially given that Magnus has played queen c2 in the past against the same opponent. He must have had a deep idea. And let me kind of explain to you what his idea is after you see his next move. a4, rook e8, queen a3. Now everything makes a lot of sense, guys, right? He understands such thing as statics versus dynamics. Meaning that in these positions, whenever you're doing the minority attack, it's actually quite useful to trade the queens. Why is that? Well, because when you trace the pawn chains, right, this pawn chain is pointing to the queen side. Black's pawn chain in turn is pointing to the king side, right? Typically, black tries to get an attack, ideally trying to get the knight there, f5, sometimes even g5, g4, if he can, that is. And a lot of the times, white's king may find himself under the enemy fire. So this idea, queen a3, is quite clever. He thinks, all right, now that my opponent's going to take, I'm going to play, rook b1, b4 at some point, and just have a free attack against the b7 pawn. If black ever tries to play an a5, he says, okay, what's the big deal? I'm just going to go here, right? I'm going to get my rook to b4, maybe a5 next, and really target the weakness. As we say, play for two results. White is absolutely no risk of losing the game, and it's only a question whether or not black can hold. A lot of grandmasters don't like to play black, where you just have to hold and really no counterplay, and Fabi is one of them. And he simply plays queen c7, thinking that